Sandy Munro interviewed Elon Musk. The link of the video is in the description.
You are coming to the event and are coming, zooming in.
Yeah.
What's new in your world?
Well, let's see. I guess right now I'm sort of debating the number of bots on Twitter with Parag on Twitter, currently, what I'm being told is that there's just no way to know the number of bots. It's like as unknowable as the human soul, basically. And this is So.
Sorry, I was going to shift, but when you think about the importance of going to Mars versus solving critical energy and climate change problems here on Earth, obviously the effort with Tesla is related to sustainable energy. And I think going back to probably the 1950s, there were engineering designs around plasma fusion or fusion-based systems that have evolved to these plasma systems, to these tokamak systems. And every decade, it's like, hey, next decade we're going to have it. What's your point of view on where plasma fusion systems are? Are we going to have fusion energy this century, this decade? And does it create limitless energy where the electricity production goes up by 10,000-fold and the price of electricity drops by 10,000-fold? And then what does that world on Earth look like if that happens? So I guess the question is is that technology real? When does it happen? And what happens to the world here when and if that happens?
I'll answer that question, but then let me sort of point out what the actual issue is. If the question is is it possible to solve fusion energy? 100% yes, definitely is for sure. So and really just using a tokamak style, which is basically a donut ring with electromagnets that control the plasma. The way to solve that is simply scale up the tokamak. Fusion is very much a scale based thing. You want to minimize your surface to volume ratio. So as you scale up a tokamak, you reduce your surface to volume ratio, which means the volume you have relative to the surface, you now have much more. You can basically have a hot zone in the center that's relatively far away from the walls, and more of a hot zone. So it's not, in my mind, a question as to whether fusion can work, but there is a question as to whether it is economically viable, and whether it is competitive with alternatives. I think that the economic viability of fusion is a much bigger question, and I think the answer probably is that fusion is not competitive economically. I think that is. I would say it's probably not competitive economically by an order of magnitude.
Where does it break? Is it a materials breakdown, or where does it break down economically?
Well, so you can't just use normal hydrogen. You need to use deuterium and tritium, unusual forms of hydrogen. Helium-3. There are some other types of fusion that could be used, but these are just not. They're not there's not a lot of this raw material. It's quite difficult to get the raw material. So first you have to get the raw material. That's very expensive raw material, and then it's not just about generating the energy. You've got to turn that energy into usable electricity. You can't just have a hot thing. Okay, so the hot thing has to translate to usable electricity. So I think you've got a cost of fuel issue, which is very significant. You've got to have a whole bunch of knockdowns from when you generate the heat to when you actually convert that into electricity. You've got some very difficult maintenance issues with a fusion reactor. And that should be then compared to alternatives. The sustainable energy alternatives that I think are overwhelmingly more competitive are solar energy, wind, geothermal, hydro, some tidal energy, but it's really primarily solar and wind. Now, and you can really say, why bother creating fusion on Earth when we have a gigantic fusion reactor in the sky that just works with zero maintenance? and it shows up every day. And it's free.
Pretty consistent, yeah.
But Elon, can we scale to 1,000x or 100x our electricity production here using solar and other renewable sources?
Yes. So the amount of surface area you need to power the United States is remarkably tiny. So you need like basically roughly 100 miles by 100 miles of territory, and it obviously doesn't need to be in one place in the United States to power the United States. It's like a little corner of Texas or Utah, the entire country. And then if you could basically power you probably 10x the just with solar alone, without displacing anyone's home, power an economy 10 times the size of the United States in the United States on land.
When energy prices,
if you extend that to water, because Earth is 70% water.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, okay, now we could probably have a civilization that is 100 times as energy intensive as we currently have it.
And so what does that look like was the last part of my question, which is a world where energy costs are, say, let's 100 times cheaper than they are today, and we have 100 times more energy production capacity. What changes about civilization? What do we do differently, and what do we see change most kind of dramatically?
Well, currently we're not, because of just generally low birth rates almost worldwide. Civilization is not headed to have a population that is an order of magnitude greater than where we're currently. We're currently headed towards a population decline, and this is almost everywhere in the world. So, it basically seems as though as soon as you have like urbanization and education beyond a certain level and income beyond a certain level, birth rates plummet. And so as countries get wealthier, their birth rates plummet. It's somewhat counterintuitive because people will say like, well, it's too expensive to have a baby. Nope. The wealthier you are, the fewer kids you have. The more educated you are, the fewer kids you have. So it's the inverse. So I'm not sure who would use all that energy unless there's a significant change in the birth rate. Or we have a very robot-oriented economy. So that's also possible. So if we've got a lot of, four-wheeled robots in form of cars and androids, humanoid robots, then you could certainly see that there'd be perhaps a need for an order of magnitude more energy. But it's not coming from the humans unless something major changes on the human birth rate level. This, by the way, is I think the biggest single threat to civilization right now is the.
Yeah. Why do you think societally people just make those decisions when they become more affluent? Is it that they just become more selfish, or there's more things for them to do and they have more money to spend on themselves, and they say, you know what, I don't want to have a large family. I want to, go to Coachella.